So what have you noticed about the important qualities of leaders these days compared to the past?
Oh, a great many. It really is a different kettle of fish these days. So in the olden days, or not so long ago really, we're talking 15 years ago, leadership was hierarchical. People used to lead by diktat or instruction. It was top down. People were very conscious of their positional power as leader. And they used to conceive the job as getting the most out of people, whereas now they talk about getting the best out of people. And of course you can understand that there's a very different style of engagement that the two attributes require. And people think these days about igniting other people's passion, whereas they used to think about imposing their will. So leadership has become a much more relational capability rather than a personal capability. So you don't find leaders in quite the narcissistic and charismatic style these days. There are exceptions, of course. People like Steve Jobs was well known for his charisma and his individuality. But of course, many people reported how difficult it was to work for Steve Jobs. But the rule these days is really that relational characteristics and relational skills, which is why, of course, it might be so much more smart to have more women in leadership roles, and why underneath all of the so-called government discomfort with the fact that women aren't making it into the boardroom, there is actually a social psychological factor. Across the world, in family areas, women are the ones who facilitate neighbourly relationships, relationships between generations, relationships between genders, and so they have a lot of mastery of these skills. We're overlooking this, and this troubles me some.
So Roy, I understand that you recently did a study with CEOs and HR professionals, and that some interesting insights and qualities emerged from that study. Can you talk about what they were?
The qualitative study that we did recently, we had about 20 people in the study, so it was a qual study, about an hour or so's interview with each of the 20, and they were broken down between 12 CEOs of organisations in the US and in the UK and Europe, and 8 HR professionals. We were really quite surprised, pleasantly surprised, because the single biggest quality that people felt that the new leader needed in these days rather than the old days, it was self-awareness, which really interested us. It wasn't what we were expecting. We were kind of delighted when we heard it, because we became aware that leaders were talking about recognizing the impact that they had, but also the recognizing the shadow that they cast on the organization. The phrase that sums it up, it's to ask of a leader, what are you building? They also need to stay passionate, and they need to work around their personal barriers. And that particularly is something that comes out in the area of difficult conversations or awkward transactions and negotiations. Difficult things like avoiding, blaming, conniving, and pleasing. You have to name the behavior that you want to change, not get involved in the symptoms and the details, but name the unproductive behavior. I notice that you're trying to please me again. Please stop. I'm feeling quite in a difficult place today, and trying to cheer me up is going to make me feel even more irritated. To articulate their vision and their commitment and the stands that they would take as leaders, and that in those they needed to be authentic and dependably real. They needed to be true to themselves. You know, in a strange way, there's no more accurate place to trust your gut than as a leader. So we talk about gut feelings all the time, but when you're lower down in the organization, you have such an intricate matrix to work through that you need to be in contact with that. But when you're the leader, you really do need to trust your instincts and your intuitions about the right way to take your organization forward.
So what steps do you think we should have for a powerful leadership day in the light of what we've been discussing?
An invitation that excites the people that are coming to the day. Invitations to create expectations, and people are not careful enough about how they invite people to things. I think we'll have Not that much of a problem with that, because we're going to, in a way, the source and the shrine of Ogilvy and Mather if we do this work together. And people will be most excited and almost beside themselves with interest and fascination, both to have been invited, but also to see what is there and to experience the atmosphere. So I think creating invitation will be important. For people to be able to perform together, they need to feel safe. They need to feel safe to bring them the whole of themselves to the party, so to speak. We need to bring not just their professional self, or even just their public sociable self. These are all well brought up, ladies and gentlemen, so they'll be quite skilled at public and social behaviour, but we need to bring their personal and their private aspects too, so that we can talk with them about the things that trouble them when they wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning thinking, oh my God, I haven't dealt with all of that. And then we need to create relationships on several levels, and then we need to create permission by giving them success at some creative tasks and some leadership tasks where they have to accomplish quite sophisticated things in really very short periods of time, and they'll do it brilliantly. Then we can resource them to tackle some of the leadership issues that we're going to talk about in a moment. We can practice leadership skills together, and we can do our best to embed and integrate those new skills in the people themselves as they go through the day, so that they can take them away inside themselves rather than on a series of handouts and notes. We need to tackle the key issues too. So if anger is a problem, or if avoiding is a problem, or if blaming is a problem, or if they're dealing with a particularly coercive and plotting kind of environment, we need to give them some skills and abilities to handle those sorts of conversations, difficult conversations.
So within those steps, what kind of exercises do you think we should have for the Leadership Day?
When I first talked to Miles, he talked to me about confidence. Confidence is a really interesting word that it's actually quite poorly understood. It comes from confidare. It means with trust. So to be confident, it's about having qualities in yourself that you know that work and that have been identified by your peers, that you take with you everywhere that you go. And I think we should do that in an exercise that we call qualities that work, so that everybody in the team gets a chance to be in front of the group and find out attributes of themselves that are valuable, that make them attractive and make them interesting, and that work about them. So I think that could be a very useful exercise to do. The next thing I think is relationships are the source of results. So I think we need to do some work on the different types of relationships, the 4 key domains of relationship: professional, public, personal, and private, and teach our leaders to move with fluidity and grace between the 4 levels, and to know which is called for in a relationship with colleagues or in a relationship with a team. Is this just a professional commitment that we have here, or is there something more personal or even private that we're calling for from our colleagues? We should also tackle listening skills. I've said right at the beginning that the leader needs to be a better listener almost than speaker. And they'll have had lots of training in presentation skills, but virtually none in listening skills. And I would suggest that we do a piece of work on what we call accurate empathic listening. There are 4 steps in accurate empathic listening. I'm not going to go into those now, but I think that's absolutely crucial work. I think a leader, especially in areas of pitching and big projects where you're trying to win something and make a breakthrough, and to produce some work of the type that we've produced in our game-changing campaign development with O&M back in the past, the leader needs to understand that the source of breakthroughs is unreasonable requests, and that you will have to become adept at making unreasonable requests of your team. By an unreasonable request, I mean a request that asks people to go the extra mile, to go beyond what's possible now, to make something new possible. So they're the kind of things that I definitely think we need to tackle a little bit towards the end of the day, when people have got their confidence up and have had some success and have learnt some new relational skills.